Isn't that the truth, though? Right? I mean, Matt, how many times did you say, go ask your mother?
Many times.
Chris, see?
Many times.
Right? Like Lisa's never heard that before? Huh?
Yeah, Al White, listen.
See, Al knows.
Yeah.
Al knows. We all know. We're all in the club that we turn to look at each other and go, the old wink, right? Our co-hosts on the program today include the Hall of Famer Matt Miller. Good morning again, Matt.
Good morning.
And from the House of Delegates, the newly elected Lisa White, who just completed her first House of Delegates session. Lisa, congratulations. You survived it.
I did. Thank you.
Yeah, what did you think in your first experience as an elected legislator?
Well, it was way different than I thought it was going to be. I've said this 100 times, so Chuck's probably, Delegate Horst is probably tired of hearing me say it, but I had to apologize to him right on because I am a member of the Berkeley County Republican Club, and when he would come back from session and we would drill him and drill all the delegates, and why didn't you do this, and why didn't you do that? And he'd say, well, you'd have to be there to know how it works. And I think I apologized to him 100 and sometimes, So,
because you're one of 134, you
Yeah.
don't get your own way.
no, you do not get your own way. And it is a process. I think it's important that it is a slower process for some reasons, just so that, because every bill doesn't need to get passed. So I think it is designed that way. It is frustrating. I'm not going to lie that the things that you want to get done don't even see the light of day. They don't get on an agenda because of the committee process.
Sure.
But
And
it is
you might-
a lot different than what you think it is.
You might get 133 other people to agree with you, but if the governor doesn't think it's a good bill, he can veto it.
Yes, and he's done that.
Yeah.
He's done that several times. I'm 100% behind Governor Morrissey, and I think he is showing a lot of courage in doing some of the things that he's doing. He's making hard calls, and I think a lot of those calls are necessary.
You were on education.
Yes, sir.
There were a lot of changes made in education, not the least of which was giving the legislature oversight of the State Board of Education.
Yep.
Something that has been criticized in many circles, but I would defend it in this sense. When we've done interviews on education, ultimately it always ends up in circle pointing. Well, we don't have the power to do that. It's on them. Well, that's on them. They have to do. Nobody ever has the ultimate say over education, but now at least you have ultimate oversight of it.
Yeah, and I think we saw a good example of this. I'm not talking out of school because it was public, but superintendent of schools went out and said, you have to get vaccines, and if you don't, you're going to get kicked out of school. It was a very long letter. And then, of course, Governor Morrissey has an executive order saying, no, you don't. And so I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall with that conversation, but she rescinded that letter. So I think that's a good example of why this is important.
Let's talk about the academic aspect of that bill, too, in regards to legislative oversight of the State Board of Education. What would you like to see in terms of changes made, curriculum, personnel, structure, whatever, to pull West Virginia up from 50th or 49th in education, depending on the survey?
Well, I think we've got a lot of things done, but one thing, and another delegate is working on this, and we did introduce it. It didn't get passed, but hopefully next year we can take a look at it. I think at least 3 of those positions need to be elected. I would like to see that happen.
State BOE positions?
Yeah, so that we can have some balance there. I think this bill is a very good bill. It does help that. It's got to, get through everything. But I think if we did have at least 3 of them elected, I think that would really help us a great deal. We would have more say. We did do a lot of good things in education. We got some things passed for parents' rights. I got to see a bill actually get resurrected, and that was Senate Bill 154, where if a child goes to a teacher or anybody in the school and has issues and problems, it has to be reported to the teacher. That bill was dead, and I watched a very young professional leader, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying who it is, Delegate Coop Gonzalez, resurrect that bill and work it hard and work with other delegates to make sure that did get onto the floor, and it got voted on and it got passed. And I think that's one of the really important things that we need is more parents' participation, that open dialogue. I would like to see us go back to the basics. I don't know, when you were going to school, when I was going to school, it was just basics, reading, math, arithmetic, history. I'd like to see us get back to those basic things for our students. But I think that was one of the bills that got passed that's really going to help the parents have some kind of say in what's going on in the school system. Whether it's happening in your school or not, it's the perception of it is on a federal level, and it is happening in some of our local schools that things are being hidden from the parents. And I think that if we take that out of the equation and let's just go to school and do schoolwork. Let's just school is school. Let's just learn. I think that's going to be a helpful thing.
Bill?
Yeah. Lisa, you mentioned earlier, you mentioned in passing about what emerged this weekend that the State Board of Education, Superintendent Blatt, had issued a guidance to the various school districts that vaccinations would be as had been in the past. There would be no exemptions for either religious or personal, and then because it did not pass the session this time, and then Governor Marcy said no, that's not the case. He issued an executive order,
yes, sir.
And therefore, even though it was not legislation, it was executive order. This brings to mind the legality of, it's not only just this one, but it's on the national level as well, the legislation and the executive order. If something is not done by our legislators, does the governor/president have full authority in doing something with executive orders? I gather what you're saying they do have.
Well, we have 3 more years to get it codified into law.
Yeah.
So, and we're going to keep trying to
But
do
if
that.
if it's not codified in law, it's if it stays the way it is right now, is it appropriate for the governor to have moved in and say, wait, you've got to listen to my executive order, forget about what the legislators did or did not do?
I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
So, and it's our job to make sure that it gets codified into law. It almost passed. So, we almost, I don't know if you heard about the whole story, but it almost passed on a Friday. I personally think, I was part of this mistake that we waited until Monday to vote on it. And there were 12 people, 12 that switched over to, from a yes vote to a no vote, and one switched from a no vote to a yes vote. But I think, they had the opportunity to hear from a lot of their lobbyists and, change their minds, and they voted against it. But I think it would have passed on Friday. But like I said, we do have 3 more years. And, there are elections, right? So if you don't like the executive orders, then you also have the opportunity for another election in a few years to either reelect Governor Morrissey or not. I mean, that's what elections are for. So I would say yes, I think he has the right to do that.
Okay.
Matt Miller.
You mentioned the Friday. As the legislative session ends, it is one of the most hectic things probably in life. What was your experience for that first time, like being in a basketball game and the clock is ticking down?
It wasn't as bad as it was that last Saturday. That last Saturday was something else. I've never seen anything like it. I was like, shoot me. But the first couple of weeks, it's very frustrating because you're learning. Everybody was walking through the halls going, oh, you're drinking through a fire hose, and it's learning all the different. And they had changed some of the rules from the previous session. So other people were learning some of the new rules too. So it wasn't just like the freshmen were learning that. One of the things that I think that they did really well was they met with the freshmen once a week, and this was new. So we had a caucus of just the freshmen so we could go over things that we didn't know we could ask questions. I thought that was very, very helpful.
Who led it, Lisa?
Clay Riley was doing it. Sometimes the speaker did it. But yeah, I mean, I thought that was very, very helpful to get some of that information, and that, where we could ask the questions, not in front of a whole bunch of people, but we could just, as freshmen do that.
I was going to ask, how big was that freshman class? Was it a pretty decent size?
It was a pretty decent size.
30-something?
30-some people, yeah.
Okay.
It was pretty decent. And, the one fun thing, I don't know that this is the answer to your question, but the one thing that I found that I got to get involved in after a few weeks of being there, being frustrated. You know, you're putting in all your bills, you're introducing bills, and you're like, okay, that one's never going to see the light of day, and you're new, and learning how that you have to work your bill. You really do. If you really want it, you have to work your bill. So there was one bill in particular that I was working on, which was a scope of practice bill, was to open up for PAs and NAs to be able to practice on their own without the supervision of a doctor. And what was very interesting about that, it almost got on the agenda, which would have been really cool for a freshman. But the most fun I had was the gentleman, the delegate that was sitting behind me, Delegate Parsons. He was a freshman. He had a bill that he was working on for the same thing. So we got to collaborate and work together. We got to talk to nurses. We changed the bill a little bit, working on that, changing language, talking to the health chair, the vice chair. Got to, work with Mike Height on that. And, that was really a very neat experience. Now, it got on the agenda, got taken off. But next year we're going to do it again, and hopefully it'll get on the agenda and get passed through, and we can take it to the floor.
You mentioned a delegate sitting right behind you. I'm trying to imagine what it's like. You've got an idea. Somebody else in the room probably has a similar or same idea. How do you find that out if you're not sitting directly in front, behind, or around someone?
Well, because he was sitting behind me. So you go and you get people to sign off to co-sponsor your bill. And you have 10 slots to be able to do that. So he was sitting behind me. He's a freshman. I'm introducing myself. Want to sign my bill? And he's looking at it and goes, well, I want to do this too, but I want to open it up to CRNAs too. What do you think, about that? So then we just started talking and working on it and decided to work together. It was fun. I really enjoyed that a lot.
The vaccination bill was one that the governor had pushed, and the legislators did not go along with it. Another one was certificate of need. Were you surprised the reaction of the legislators with the certificate of need?
I was, especially because I thought that they had really compromised, made some good amendments to it where it wasn't going to affect hospice. And it wasn't going to affect, I think it was rehabilitation centers. There was one other one. I can't remember what that was. Hospice was really important to me because we're rated #1 in hospice care in the country, So I think that's amazing, and I want to keep that going. So with those exceptions, I was really surprised that didn't get passed. I was surprised a lot of basic conservative Republican bills didn't get passed, or it was a very tough push to get them passed. That, I think, was the most surprising for me.
We've mentioned two. Could you mention others as well?
Well, there was one on Saturday night that took us 4 hours to pass, and that was the DEI bill. And that was a 4-hour process on Saturday night. And that was just
That had to do with the
grueling.
Democrats' involvement in that, though, didn't it?
Oh, yes, it did.
But it's also
I think we had Mike Pushkin on the show. At one
yeah,
point.
Yes, it was really bad.
yeah. But it's a procedural as well. That it's, they had to backtrack. The Senate had to backtrack and take it from a different tack. Memory serves.
Yeah, going back and forth, I found that fascinating too. So we would pass something, it would go to the Senate, then it had to go through the whole process again. So you've got the committee process that you go through. So it goes through the hearing, the markup, and the final. Then it gets out of committee. If it gets out of committee, then it goes to the floor, and then it's got a first reading, second reading for amendments, and the third reading. If it passes, it goes to the Senate. That goes through the same process through their committee, and then it goes back to the floor for them, and it goes through that same process. Then if they've made an amendment, comes back to us, and we've got to go through that process again. So I think it's designed that way on purpose because, we do want to be methodical and purposeful. We are making law. I think that's important. But it is very frustrating, too. It's a very slow and long process.
You had a bill that you were trying to get passed regarding sales tax on tax preparation services.
Yes.
Do they charge sales tax on services?
Yes.
I've never seen that.
Yes. So when I went and got my taxes done, I paid taxes. And my tax guy was like, I said, what? And he goes, yeah, well, you might want to take a look at that when you go back because it was in between session on a weekend. It was interesting because they had brought it up before. And there were 2 or 3 delegates that said, Lisa, that's already been passed. That's already been done. So I don't know why you were getting charged that tax. So I went ahead and, I had the bill written up, and the lawyer that did it, wrote it up. So I thought, well, and then I took it to finance and I said, has this been done? And they're like, yeah, I think it has. And I said, well, I'm not sure it has. So I went back down to the lawyer. She looked up the code and it had not been passed. So this was towards the tail end. So I will be bringing that up again because people thought, there's so many bills going through. People thought that it had been passed, that they had already taken care of that, and it actually had not. So I'm going to bring that up again.
You're on higher education and education choice as well.
Yes.
For your committees. In regards to the Hope Scholarship, were any changes made in this legislative session to the Hope Scholarship in one way or the other?
It's actually going to be opened up, I think, so we didn't have to do anything in 2027, I think. It's going to open up to everybody, so we didn't have to do anything on that. They did fund it again. They put a lot of money towards it to make sure, just in case, because they're anticipating more people are going to take advantage of it. I know that Delegate Krause, who's very knowledgeable on everything Hope Scholarship and schools, I was privy to be her office mate. So I got to learn a lot of information from her. She's a wealth of information. They did get passed a portal bill that they're going to get together so that parents just have to go to a portal and enter their test scores and things like that, so that it doesn't have to go through this process of it getting lost because it goes to the Board of Education, it goes here. So it's actually going to be, all put together in one place in a portal. So that was really a good bill that got passed, I think.
Delegate Lisa White, our guest here on the program. You just completed your very first legislative session. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, the PEIA was not addressed, and I guess the governor's planning to do that by special session. That's what I'm hearing. You'll do that. What about the child care, child protective services? Was anything done in this realm?
There was a lot of really good bills. So I'm waiting for a compilation of all these bills. I don't know if you know, but I'm throwing around a lot of names. I hope this is okay with these delegates. But Delegate Burkhammer,
we've had him on the show.
Okay,
Yeah,
he leads the charge in everything: foster care, adoption, CPS. All of that. He is just an amazing person, and he is putting together everything that we did do on some of that area with children. So as soon as he gets that together, we'll be publishing that because he did a lot of work this year. A lot of things happened with the foster care system, how the CPS system works. We did a lot of diving into that. There's a lot more to be done.
It's interesting you say that because except for Senate Bill 757, I think, or 727, that really never saw the light of day, I did not see a lot from the legislators dealing with child care.
Yeah, there was a lot. So we did do a lot of different things. I can't list them all right now, but there was a lot of progression moving forward with that. Like I said, we are really diving into that more and more and looking into, because we have a lot of children that are homeless right now. So we're
if memory serves, and there's something like 6,000 children that need some sort of special attention. We're addressing less than 500, I think around 400 that we're addressing.
Yes. Yeah. So me personally think that we really need to dive into, and I don't know what this looks like because I'm new, but it's something that's been on the forefront of my mind and will continue to be, where we are spending our money and where money is actually needed. And to me, it's the most vulnerable, which are children, and then our handicapped people that suffer from different things, that they can't work and they can't get out, and they need these special programs, and the elderly. We're spending a lot of money on things that I'm not sure why we're doing that, and I think we need to really take a dive into that. I did not vote for the budget because I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done there.
Where are we spending money where we could be spending less?
I just in the looking at from the outside in, I really want to get into it line by line, but there's a lot of higher education money that I'm not sure why that is being spent that way. There was a lot of appropriations for that. Like I said, between now and next session, I'm going to be diving into more of the financial aspects of things because I do think that, we don't get reports like we're supposed to. We don't get them on time. We ask for these reports, we don't get them on time, and we finally get them, and we're not sure if they're, I don't want to say that. So we just need to look at the reports, and we just need to see where this money is being spent, because you're right. We do need to really look at where it's needed and where it's being spent just willy-nilly, and we're not going to be able to sustain some of this anymore, federal level, state level. So we're really going to have to start taking a deep dive into what we're doing. We did do a lot of good things on the economic front to help us as West Virginians create jobs and bring in some money, but we need to do more.
The microgrid and the data centers, a lot of that money is going to be used to accelerate the elimination of the personal property tax.
Yes.
Could that money be better used to address some of these needed programs?
So I'm going to say no to that, only because I'm coming at it from a conservative, fiscally conservative view. You put more money in people's pockets, they're going to be able to take care of themselves. And they're going to be able to pay for their daycares and things that go on for their children. We need to get more money back into our citizens' pockets.
But the amount of money someone would save from personal income tax would not come close to paying for the daycare.
Right now, you're right. I mean, our daycare system it's expensive, but we already have programs for that are being funded. I mean, we have the Mountaineer something program. I can't think of what it's called. Mountaineer.
Yeah, but I'll come back to the fact that we have something like 5,600 children that need to be more attention given, and we do not have the money to do this. How do you come up with the money?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think it goes hand in hand, right? You really need to investigate where money is being spent now, and is it being spent where it needs to be spent? Is it being spent the way we're being told it's being spent? Yeah. And then we also need to put money back into our people's pockets. And I think doing this microgrid and putting money and to reduce that personal income tax is really going to be a big deal. I just do. I think it's really, you're going to see, I'm hoping, I'm praying that you're going to see a big difference.
Lisa, I think I have an answer for your confusion on the sales tax, or the confusion around it, regarding tax preparation services. Not that you were confused, but that you got confusing answers on it. Mm-hmm. And I got it from CPA Ken Apple in Martinsburg. Basically, if your tax return is prepared by a professional, an attorney or a CPA, it's exempt from sales tax. But if you go to a tax preparer who's not a CPA or an attorney, there is a sales tax.
Yes, it's a service fee.
Yeah, and professionals are exempted from having to charge a sales tax on a service fee, which is the basis where I was asking, because Ken does my taxes, I've never been charged a sales tax by Ken. Yeah. And that's because as a professional, he's exempt from the service fee.
Yes, it's a service fee. Yep, yeah, you're right.
30 seconds left, Lisa. Those 30 seconds are all yours.
Well, I mean, it's an honor to be here. I've just got to say, being in the legislature was an honor. I'm looking forward to the next session, where I'm sure we're going to have some special sessions. There's a lot of things that we need to get done. I just really appreciated the help that I got there. And, like I said, it was very frustrating. I don't like all the way things are done, and I don't like that there's just a couple people that are in charge. But that's a discussion for another day.
And that's a life lesson, too, isn't it?
Yes,
There's always a couple of people who are in charge. And right now, I'm the person in charge of getting us out of here in time for the commercial break. Lisa, thank you.
Thank you very much.